Hi, today we're going to talk about the wild horse and relationships. The wild horse is the fact that you think the worst about yourself first. Now, with relationships, two things happen. First of all, there are two parties in the relationship, and when you interact, you tend to think the worst about yourself first. So sometimes people send messages to you in that relationship that were never intended to send the message that you received because of your wild horse. Your friend, your spouse, your colleague might have just said something innocently and you heard the worst about yourself. Therefore, it's very important to check things, to make sure that the other person, what was the intent of that message, to make sure that we are on the same page and we understand what the other person intended to tell us. Now that is the first thing that happens, and it happens on both sides in a relationship. The wild horse causes us to hear things that are not necessarily the main message that was the intent of the other person. The other thing that happens in relationships is that the wild horse causes us to think the worst of those people that we identify with automatically. So, for example, you are in a setting and somebody says something about your children, about your spouse, about your company, about a friend, and they don't necessarily mean it bad, but you hear it as bad because you hear the worst about yourself. Now you might be saying, hang on, but they aren't myself. You see, there are things that we identify as extensions of ourselves. And because we identify with them as extensions of ourselves, we tend to have a wild horse situation with them also in times. So, to recap, in relationship, the wild horse creates tension at times because we hear the worst about ourselves and the other person also hears the worst about themselves. And that creates a tension between the individuals within that relationship. If it doesn't matter whether this is a work relationship, a private relationship, whatever relationship you might be in. The second thing that happens is we hear things about people that we connect with. And we hear the worst about them in our situation. And that causes tension in relationships as well. Now, how do we solve this whole tension? First of all, we need to be reflecting on what is it that we are hearing, especially what are we hearing repeatedly. If you hear something repeatedly, you have what I call a stallion. That's your wild horse that is always there again. So we've got some wild horses that pop up here and there and cause chaos, but all of us have got stallions. Those are those repeating wild horses that we see all around us. Now, if you've identified the stallion, you can do two things. First of all, and I would recommend both of them. First of all, decide how you're going to change your thinking in that decision. Consciously decide about a replacement thought. That would make sense still, but that you could replace it with. Secondly, I need to check with the other person what their intent was. I know that this is always the repeating thing, and I need to ask that person, is this real? Because I'm not saying the wild horse is always a lie. Sometimes it might be the truth. But even if it's the truth, if the truth comes out, if the truth comes out, it will set us free to deal with whatever we need to deal with. So it's always good to have those discussions, even if they create a little bit of tension in the beginning, but at least we have it out there and we can deal with it. And it's not underlying, and we're not confused with people's behavior because of it. And when we've had those discussions, we can agree on how we're going to deal with it in future. This way, in the relationship, we can get everyone working on taming those wild horses within yourself and within the other people. Have fun.